and welcome to Talking Europe. Calling for an emergency brake on paying social welfare to EU migrants, demanding guarantees for countries outside the Eurozone, asking for more national sovereignty and overall better competitivity, the UK is renegotiating its relationship with the EU. As Brussels gets ready to debate possible reforms, we're joined by 3 British MEPs who represent the various parties and will hopefully give us a rounded view of things there. Mr. Charles Tannock, you're of the Conservative Party, the party of David Cameron, which in itself is split on the issue of staying in or outside of the EU. The other side, I have Mr. William Dartmouth of UKIP, the Eurosceptic party that clearly wants Britain to leave, no matter what. And also we have with us Ms. Jude Curtin-Darling of the Labour Party. Thank you all for being with us. Mr. Tannock, let me perhaps start with you. We've seen now we've got these 4 reforms were requested, issues on 4 separate issues in the UK. David Cameron says that real progress has been made, has been shown. That progress will be debated on, possibly approved at the summit in the end of February, mid-February, the 18th. But is there real process? What actually is on the table in terms of reforms?
Well, I think he's actually addressed the 4 baskets, which he actually raised 3 years ago in the Bloomberg speech. We're talking about the competition agenda, the issue of protecting our financial interests against Eurozone caucusing. We're talking here about more powers to national parliaments with the red card. We're talking about ending the ever closer political union aspiration for being clearly stated in the treaties that we are not part of that ever closer political union. And of course, the issue of the pull factor, which comes from our in-work benefit system, which is so generous and has resulted in very large movements of people, and the call for a delay for 4 years and the emergency brake, and an admission by the European Commission that the stress is already so strong on our social security system that they would grant that right from the very beginning. So I think we've actually got a very good basis for a draft. And of course, there are things that need to be finalised and negotiated. But actually, I'm very positive about it, and I've been welcoming it and congratulating the team for negotiating such a deal.
Mr. Dartmouth, on the other side of the table, do you think enough has been put in these reforms? A lot of people say it's true that with the social welfare restriction, if you like, this option that the UK can now ask the Council for, under exceptional circumstances, restrict welfare benefits to workers on a gradual scale for up to 4 years. Is that enough? Is that basket, can we tick the box and say Britain has got what it needs?
I'd just like to make the context clear. I take the view that you're either in your political union or you're not, irrespective of any so-called reforms.
Okay, so it's all
now,
or nothing.
what Prime Minister promised the British people was that there would be a reformed Europe. What actually happened was that he asked for very, very little, and he's got even less than that. The fact of the matter is that this is a charade, it's a trivial charade, as the Daily Mail, which is a government-supporting newspaper, has actually written in its leader yesterday, and it's one that demeans the office of Prime Minister. Now, on the specific matter of benefits, although it is on the one side as a matter of principle, hard to bear, that people should receive benefits out of a system which they haven't paid into at all, people don't come to the UK for benefits. They come there for work. And the fact of the matter is that the minimum wage, which is going to be increased in the UK, is 7 times what it is in Bulgaria, 4 times what it is in Croatia, double what it is in Spain, and I could go on and on and on and on. And the fact of the matter is that we have a complete open door, and that's going to go on and on. And to make it worse still, both the parties, which Dr. Tannock and MS Curtin-Darling represent, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, are all cheerleaders for Turkey to join the European Union, which means that another 75 million people will have the absolute right to live, work and settle in the UK.
Ms. Curtin-Darling, perhaps, do you want to reply to some of that? Open door policy, is that what the UK needs? We've talked about social welfare, but is it more stopping migration to the UK altogether?
Well,
are we going far enough?
I think we have to be serious that this is a referendum not on what David Cameron has negotiated, not on whether the deal is a good deal or a bad deal. It's a referendum on whether we're inside or outside the EU. And in that context, the whole question of the value of our EU membership to the UK has to be brought into the public debate, because actually we are much better off inside the EU than we would be outside. And the Out campaign have completely failed to explain what the UK would look like outside, what our relationship would be with the EU, what impact it would have on immigration. The reality is that if we left the EU, we would probably have the same questions around immigration that we have today, because we can control immigration from outside the EU.
And indeed, I believe the vast majority of
migrants
migrants
are from
outside.
outside than come from in the EU.
The vast number of migrants to the UK are actually outside the EU, so they still go through the visa systems.
That's entirely because the Cameron government broke its promise, which it made in 2010 and 2015, to produce net immigration to below 100,000. The Cameron government has done nothing, or very little. Very little.
It was a coalition government.
The Cameron-led government, and this government now, the figures are still going up, has done very little to control the degree of immigration which they even can control. But that is a completely different issue.
Well,
the fact of the matter is, I thought we were discussing the European Union. We are discussing the European Union. So long as we remain in the European Union, 450 million people have the absolute right to live, work and settle in the UK. And the fact of the matter is, because the economy is doing well and we have a very good social service system, and also because they can earn much more money, they will come and they will continue to come, and this will be compounded.
But it's also the Brits living abroad.
The document, it makes it very clear that you don't have an absolute right to live in the UK, only if you have a job and you can maintain yourself.
That's what Cameron asked for.
That's in the document.
That's what Cameron asked for, but
in the draft proposal, it does lay out that if you...
That's been restricted.
Well, let's address the document. Let's address the document. People are very excited about these cuts in, about this... about this matter of benefits. The fact of the matter is that Cameron wanted a complete stop to benefits. What he's got a taper to benefits. And that has got to be approved by the European Parliament.
Surely that confirms the point that you made. You made the point that if people contribute to the system, then they should be able to benefit from the system. The taper means that as you contribute to the system, and we know that EU migrants in the UK contribute far more to our tax contribution than they get out. Because they young, and because, well, that's not rubbish. That's actually based.
Which people have been actually putting forward before.
I'm sorry, Dartmouth. But actually, that is not rubbish. Well,
Mr. Dartmouth,
will you let anybody else speak,
I live in London,
please?
and London relies on the workforce that comes from European migration for so much of our industry, the construction industry, the catering industry. And to be absolutely frank, I mean, I have a lot of respect for William Dartmouth in many respects, but it is not true that European migration has been a net burden to the UK taxpayer. They have been net contributors.
Do you think the British people, however, want to slow migration in general?
Yes, of course they do, and they're absolutely right, because of pressure on public services, and we do need to get the numbers down. And I do believe that this emergency brake will slow things down, because it will, the pull factor of in-work benefits for low-paid workers is a factor. It's not a very big factor, but it will have some effect.
For the Labour Party, it's enough.
But I think what people are really concerned about when it comes to questions about migration is undercutting. And what this doesn't address is the concerns that people have that employers are able to use loopholes, to bypass rules, to ensure that they bring foreign labour in, which then puts pressure on terms and conditions. Now, that could be addressed in Westminster. And if Cameron was serious about ensuring a fair internal market, then we in Westminster would close the loopholes which make our labour market unfair for local workers.
We're simply saying that we, like every other country in the world, particularly, for example, the United States, should be able to choose who
the United
comes
States,
to our country,
actually, President Barack Obama is calling for the UK to stay in Europe.
That is because that's
all of our
and the reason for that is we're on a French programme. We're on a French programme. You will remember your great president, Charles de Gaulle, said that when he vetoed the UK, he said the UK will be a Trojan horse for the United States. Now, that, I'm not saying that point is valid, but as somebody who was educated in the United States, that's still the view of the State Department. That's why they want us in. But I thought we were talking about immigration. It's a simple point. The British people, contrary to what you might think from my two colleagues here, both of whom have been in favour of unlimited, unrestricted immigration, want there to be a cap on immigration, and we can't have it so long as we remain in the European Union. It's as simple as that. And when Turkey comes in...
Can Lord Dartmouth address the fact that for European migration, it's a balanced equation? There are something like 2.2 million Brits living on the continent and 2.4 or 5 living in Britain. It goes both ways.
And I think it basically all comes down to money.
Is Lord Dartmouth saying that all the Brits in Spain and France will now have to return to Britain?
On the contrary.
It's a balanced equation, and European migration to Britain has been a great boon to our economy. Unemployment is very low. Our economy is prospering. So what is the problem with Europeans?
I suggest you campaign on that.
What is the problem with it?
As far as that specific point is concerned, the 2.8 million people, nearly 1 million people, are people who are retired living in Spain.
And costing the Spanish
state social benefits.
They use the health services. They use all of their public services.
Let me finish. If we look, for instance, at Poland, according to the Polish embassy, there's almost 800,000 people from Poland living and working in the UK. The equivalent number in Poland, according to Eurostat, is about 22,000.
But they're paying in those Polish
people. So it's very, very asymmetrical. It's very, very asymmetrical. But this really isn't the point.
What is your problem with Polish workers?
We ought to be able to choose the British people. The British people are clear that the number one issue is actually immigration. If you wish to campaign on a platform of unrestricted immigration, I wish you would.
I think it comes down basically to money, to be honest, and I would like to get an idea of what would happen to the UK if it leaves the biggest trading partner it has, the European Union.
First of all,
I think that's absolutely right.
Can I just make this point?
Quickly.
It is a big misunderstanding, and by the way, the BBC are much worse than you are. It is a big misunderstanding. China last year sold 304 billion euros worth of goods to the EU single market. The fact of the matter is, the trade, you do not have to be a member of the European Union in order to be able to export to the European Union.
Yeah, but 500 million consumers.
But similarly, I mean, I keep on hearing from people like Lord Dartmouth that the European Union prevents Britain from exporting to the world. If that was the case, Germany would never be part of this club.
I think the reality is that there are regions like my own in the northeast of England who are net beneficiaries, pound for pound, of our European membership. In fact, we depend as a region on our European membership for our entire economic regional strategy. We are an export-rich region. We're the only region in the UK that has a consistent trade surplus. That trade surplus is with the EU, and we get more out of the EU budget, because fundamentally what the EU budget does is redistribute from rich regions to poorer regions. So for a region like my own, which our whole infrastructure, all of our
London,
of
the city is a financial hub.
London relies on membership of the European Union. The City of London, the financial services, in terms of the passporting, you know, something like 15% of London's population are of European origin, EU citizens. Our economy is deeply reliant on membership of the European Union.
Do you fear that the banks, some banks were planning to leave the UK?
I think there is a danger there. And I genuinely think that the trouble with the UKIP and the Brexiters' agenda is they don't really have a guarantee that if we leave, we will be able to negotiate access to the single market.
Sorry, this is a complete misunderstanding. How do you explain? I simply point out the three largest exporters, China, Russia and the United States, do not have trade agreements with the EU and have full access to the single market. This is one of the big...
They pay WTO tariffs.
They pay WTO tariffs, of which the average is 1%. Of which the average is 1%. In 2014,
motor cars?
China exported 302 billion euros worth of goods. We exported 190 billion. You don't need to be you don't need to be a member of, or you don't need to be a member in order to be able to export.
Five of the UK's top export countries are actually European Union countries. Do you not fear a retaliation?
If our great friends of the European Union are going to impose sanctions on us, and break down the World Trade Organization rules, that is clearly a matter for them. But it's just not going to happen. Although there are a few fanatics like that fat German in your committee, Mr. Brock, who probably want that to happen. But fortunately, I think he's on his way out.
Mr. Curzon, darling.
I think that the fact is that what is being compared is on a completely different scale. Nearly half of our exports are focused on the EU market. And although our emerging
would they
economies
stop? Is that your
exports,
argument?
our emerging
not true.
economies exports are increasing, they're nowhere near. And I think a really good comparison was actually said, and I very rarely quote Tory MPs, but was said by a Tory MP in Westminster, saying, as a company, why would you give up your domestic market, give up your secure trading partners to then go and explore elsewhere?
Because
you use your market as a base to then reach out into the rest of the world.
This is the
don't
big
go
lie.
out
The
into
trade
space.
would go on.
Can I just say, I mean,
Mr. Dartmouth,
would
I had
go on.
2 seconds.
You can argue the facts and
Are you
figures on
suggesting
trade
that
for a
all
very long
trade would
time.
stop?
But the European Union is more than just transactional economics. It's very
That's a
important,
very
the
good
single
point.
market. But
Indeed.
there's
That's
also
a very
about
good point.
Britain's role in the world. I'm a foreign policy and security
And this
and
is
defence
one
expert.
wonders,
I see the
where does
weakening and the
Britain see-
dangers of us pulling out in terms of, you know, what that would
National
mean for
clout.
Mr. Putin's ambitions
Well, I'll tell you what it
in
would mean. The
Ukraine.
first thing-
What it
the
would
first-
mean, what
if
it
we
would mean for
Am I
what it
allowed
would
to
mean
answer
for the
this?
Iranian sanctions regime.
Yes,
What it would
okay.
mean
So
for stability
Britain's
in the
role in
Western
the world,
Balkans.
you would
there are many
fall
other
down.
aspects to our membership beyond purely the economics.
Very, very good
Stronger
point.
together.
We can, first of all, we can cooperate with other countries without being in a political union with them. Our strongest alliance is that with the United States. We aren't in a political union with them. On the Pacific matter of foreign policy, the UK, like France, has got a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, and that seat is under constant threat from the European Union. The people here just passed a resolution the other day about that.
I think it's always attractive when male politicians shout over female politicians in public debates. But I think, look at the bigger picture. We are in the middle of the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. We are in the middle of a big question about terrorism and our internal security. In this situation, is the best solution to withdraw behind our borders, to isolate
that is
ourselves
the big question,
and
I
pull
think,
ourselves
your point.
away? Or should we be working with our neighbours for our common security and for our common
And the
future as a
border would
continent?
move back from Calais to Dover,
Well-
and we'd have probably more problems in terms of people leaving Calais.
That's a
and coming
whole
and asking
other
for asylum
debate,
in
the whole,
Britain.
because we know the UK already has opt-outs on Schengen, it's got opt-outs on immigration in the refugee situation. Lots more to debate clearly on this Brexit issue, but sadly we're out of time for this week's show. Do join us again, though. Thank you all for my guests for giving us some insight into what's going on over there in the UK and the effect it's having on us here in Europe. That brings us to the end of this edition. Do take care. I'm going to have to get you all back.